Hey YouTube, welcome back to my channel. Today I want to talk about a fragrance that's new to my collection. It's Dioriviera by Dior. The story here is I smelled this when it first came out in June of 2023. I was on a work trip in San Francisco and I smelled it in Neiman Marcus. And I remember at the time that it was getting a lot of negative criticism. It was the first fragrance by Francis Kurkdjian when he became the in-house perfumer at Dior, and there was a lot of anticipation about his first release, and I think people were pretty disappointed by this one. And the reasoning at the time was when Francois Demachy, the last Dior in-house perfumer, left, the last few releases for the Dior Privé line were kind of these watery, fruity floral, not very challenging, mass-pleasing efforts, many of which I actually like a lot. But they were kind of derided in fragrance community circles. And so when this one came out, I think people were expecting something really groundbreaking from Francis Kurkdjian, and instead we kind of got more of the same. All the same, I really enjoyed it when I first tried it back then, but then promptly forgot about it. Fast forward to June of 2024, I was on another work trip in San Francisco and at the same Neiman Marcus where I smelled it again, and I was struck by just how much I really enjoyed it. And I decided to myself that I would get a bottle for a trip that I had planned to New York City, which is a place that I used to live and I have a lot of friends. And as I was planning this trip, I knew that it was going to be really warm and muggy, sticky, humid, hot, because that's how New York is in the summer. And I thought Dioriviera, with its freshness and its kind of novel scent profile, would be a cool choice for that trip. So I splurged and got myself a bottle. I actually didn't buy it at Neiman Marcus because they only had the big bottles. I went on the Dior website and got this 40 ml bottle. And I'm very happy about that because there's no way that I would ever use 125 milliliters of almost any perfume. So this 40 ml is a perfect size for me. And I think they're relatively affordable in that you don't have to splash out a ton of cash. I think this was about $140. It's also the perfect size for travel. I really like kind of sizes that you can throw in a bag and take with you. Anyway, what does it smell like? The notes given by Dior, I think, are just fig or fig leaf, rose, and green notes. But to my nose, there's a lot more going on here. I would say that the kind of categories I'd put this in is it's definitely a fig-forward perfume. There is rose as a background player, but I wouldn't actually call it kind of like the second leading actor, whatever that word is, the supporting actress. It's very minor, in my opinion. What I really like about this fragrance is the collection of musks that Kurkdjian uses here to give it this really beautiful, diffusive, kind of molecular, transparent, airy, but rather persistent cloud. It has a really great sillage. There are also other green notes that I get. I get actually a lot of something like jasmine or hedione that is like a very fresh, not at all indolic floral note. There's also a sweetness there. I think there's a lot of focus here on the fig fruit as opposed to the fig leaf. There's nothing about Dioriviera that's metallic or sort of crisp or even milky as a lot of fig leaf fragrances can come off. This is much more about the fleshiness of a fig, the sweetness. I've heard people say, like Henna from the Canadian beauty blog has said that she gets a ton of honey from this, and I can kind of see that. There is something that's like a natural sweetness. It could also be something like dates. I think in my mind, dates and figs are kind of closely related. At the same time, it's not so sweet as to be cloying or annoying to me. I really don't like sweet fragrances that much. But over the course of my time on my trip in New York, this performed so well for the uses that I had it. And I was just really, really enjoying it the whole time. You can see that I put a fairly big dent. It was about a 10-day trip. And I wore it a lot. And by the time I got home, and I had access to all of my perfumes, I was still kind of craving to wear Dioriviera, which I think is a really good sign. Now, as I reflect back on why this was possibly not a very popular release in the community, I mentioned that people were not really into the later releases by Francois Demachy at Dior because they were kind of watery, fruity florals, and this is more of the same. But I really admire that Kurkdjian took what was, at the time, the DNA for the house, these mass-appealing, easygoing, but very refined fruity floral fragrances, and released one of his own, while also putting his own signature spin on it. It is unmistakably a Kurkdjian in that it has a really dazzling sillage. It is kind of unplaceably addictive. It has that it factor. There are so many Kurkdjian perfumes that I think are just excellent because you can't figure out why such a simple scent is so amazing or so addictive. Baccarat Rouge being the primary example of that phenomena. But I just loved wearing this in the heat, in the dirtiness of the city. I always felt fresh. It always put a smile on my face. I'm wearing it today, and I don't know, I'm just blown away by how comforting and sort of perfect this is as a summer fragrance. I also wanted to share some of the other things that I brought on this trip because I enjoyed them as well. I brought this workhorse, another 13. I wore this to a party, I wore it to dinner with a friend, and it's just so easy to grab for this. Sometimes I'm even like a little bit bored with it because it's like, you know, the party trick that I just have done so many times. But don't get me wrong, it smells so good. That's why it's such a workhorse. It can be a room filler, it can be completely gone. It just smells like super crispy, super clean, and perfect every time I wear it. So I had to bring it with me. The next one that I took with me is actually a travel spray. This is another Kurkdjian creation. It's Lumiere Noire for Femme by Francis Kurkdjian, and I am absolutely in love with this fragrance. I talked about it a long time ago, but it is a rose sheep. It has a very prominent chili pepper note, and to me, it sort of smells like terracotta, or it also smells kind of like, it's hard to describe, but like the dirty side of Paris. It's very rich, very sensual. There's also, I think, it's not a listed note, but there's a ylang kind of vintagey smell there in the heart notes. It's long discontinued. It's impossible to get a full bottle, but some of these travel sprays are still out there, and I need to get another one because every time I wear it, I just love it. And finally, it wouldn't be a Zambo Man video without two or half of them being the Labos. So I also took this very small sample / travel spray of Rose 31, and this was one of the like real stunners on this trip. Just so good in the high heat. It's a woody ambroxan incense fragrance with a little bit of rose. Like I get the rose at the very top, and maybe it's like a slight thread throughout, but really for me it's like a dirty ambroxan incense. Tiny bit of oud actually, which I got more and more the more I wore it. This one might be full bottle worthy. Anyway, that was just a few fragrances that I wore on a trip this summer. They were all really good to me. I'd love to know what you've been wearing this summer and if you've tried any of these. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.